Welcome back to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser, and this week I don't have a guest. She did not show up, but that's okay because it gives me time to kind of do an episode alone. It's been on my heart to do this episode, and every time I sit down to record, I seem to lose my train of thought, and then I get frustrated and then just hit stop and walk away from the episode. So this time I'm just going to freestyle it. I'm not going to have any notes, and I'm just going to go through my stream of consciousness, thoughts that I think about all the time, things that I wish people knew, things that I wish I knew when I was younger. Yeah. So for those of you who are new to my podcast, I started this podcast back in 2019, I believe. But the idea for this podcast started in 2017. And I wanted to do so much with this podcast and with teaching people things that I was learning and reading from books. So let's rewind a little bit. For people who are just now tuning into this podcast, I got married late in life. I got married at 37 years old, and I was fortunate to marry a husband who was an entrepreneur and basically retired me at 37. I remember the day he said, I can take care of you. You don't have to go back to work. And I was like Ali Wong, oh my God, I made it. I don't have to work anymore. But after 3 or 4 months, I started to feel really just bored. I mean, yes, I organized the garage and cleaned out the kitchen and all these things because we did move into a new home. But I got bored. For somebody who has been working since she was 14 and a half, now all of a sudden I'm retired at 37 and I could be a stay-at-home stepmom. It was kind of a eye-opening experience because I was bored. And I'm not the type of person to just sit around and watch TV, even though I love a good Netflix binge and I love a good Bravo reality TV series. But after a while, I did get bored. And eventually I started to read books, Audible books. As I was cleaning the house or organizing the pantry or doing the laundry, I was listening to Audible books. My husband bought me these headphones, these Beats headphones before AirPods were a thing. And I was around the house just listening to Audible books. And my husband actually allowed me to use his username and password and download all of the Audible books that he had in his account. And my husband reads a lot of self-help books and a lot of entrepreneurial books. And the very first book that I downloaded and started listening to was Oprah's book, God, What I Know for Sure. I have it I'm looking over here. If you're watching this on YouTube, I have it on my bookshelf. And in the book, What I Know for Sure is just a whole bunch of different quotes from different people that she's interviewed. And honestly, I just started reading more and more books. And the more that I read, the more that I realized that a lot of people don't know this knowledge, the knowledge of the law of attraction, or the knowledge that our thoughts become things, or the knowledge that we can become the master of our emotions, the knowledge that we can self-heal. All these different things aren't exactly topics that are talked about on television. Well, now I think the consciousness is opening up and we're having these open conversations now. But when I was growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, these weren't conversations we weren't having. I mean, mental health was not prioritized at all. And I grew up in a toxic environment. My mother was abusive, both emotionally and physically. And my father was an alcoholic. He was hardly ever home. He kind of was an avoidant type person, just avoided the chaos and stayed at work a lot. So he was a workaholic. And we basically raised ourselves. I always feel that my sisters were more my parental figures, and my brother, than anyone was. And they were young themselves. They were in their early 20s. So they were raising me in their early 20s, and early or late teens. So we really didn't have a concept of all the things that were happening. We were just kind of being raised by wolves. And sometimes we were, when my sisters and my brother eventually got married at a really young age and had their own children, they eventually forgot about me and my other sister. And my other sister and I just ended up raising ourselves. We were latchkey kids by the time we were in high school, and we had to figure it out. Like I said earlier, my first job was at 14 and a half. And I remember thinking, as soon as I get this job, I'm going to want to become like independent. I could become independent. I can do my own thing. I can have my own money and not have to ask permission. And I could eventually buy my own car. I mean, I had all these ideas. And now, like I said, the conversation's being open about life and mental health and trauma and growing up with emotionally immature parents. And I didn't know then that the reason why I wanted to become an adult so fast, and I did, I had adult experiences that I shouldn't have had at the age of 15. I had, looked for love in all the wrong places. I wanted to be independent, hyper independent really fast because I wanted the stability. I wanted to be away from the chaos. And the more that I could become an independent adult, the faster I can get out of my chaotic childhood home. And so now that I'm thinking about this, like I said, this is going to be a stream of consciousness. So please be prepared for the roller coaster of thoughts that go through my mind, because this is how my brain works. I specifically remember growing up and knowing and feeling as if I didn't belong, as if there was something inherently wrong with me. Why couldn't I find my place? Like I felt like all my siblings knew who they were inherently, like they knew what they had to do. They knew what their place was in the family. And I always felt out of place. And I don't know, maybe it was because of the physical abuse, or maybe it was because my mom constantly told me she didn't want me and never wanted me. There were so many factors. My brother would always make fun of me and say, my mom found you in the trash can. You're adopted. That you're the milkman's son. And he was 18 when he was telling me these things. He was joking around. He didn't understand that the jokes that he was telling me were going to affect me for the rest of my life and made me feel secluded. And I already had these thoughts of feeling like I didn't belong. So these jokes just only enhanced these feelings in my body. And it's crazy because when you think about your teen years, and I tell this to people all the time, when you're a teenager, you're no longer a child. So they're not treating you like with that childlike gloves. Not that I was ever treated with childlike gloves, but you're really not treated in that form as a child. But you're not really an adult, so they're not really treating you like an adult. So you're kind of this weird, awkward phase. Your hormones are going everywhere. You're starting to grow boobs. You're starting to get your period, and you're starting to feel awkward about who you are. Like I said, you're not exactly an adult because you can't make adult decisions, and you are not exactly a child anymore. And then throw on the factors of toxic environment and chaos and trauma. It was let's just say I was in a washing machine of just emotions when I was a teenager. And because I never learned how to control my emotions or how to be the master of my emotions, I was crazy, dramatic, and I would erupt with these emotional just tirades, and I would not know how to handle my anger or my sadness or my pain. I couldn't figure it out. And honestly, watching, because if you don't know this, you are from 0 to 7 are downloading a program on how to be in this life. And so how you download this program is by how your parents are teaching you to be. And sometimes they don't exactly teach you. They're not saying, Paola, take 5-second breath when you're angry and then let go of the anger. They're not exactly doing that. They're mirroring you. You're mirroring them. and how they react with their anger and how they react with their emotion. So if they are the type of people who shut down when something chaotic is happening, or they don't confront the person that's hurting them, or they don't set up healthy boundaries, or they unleash with crazy anger because they don't know how to handle the feeling of being, angry, then you as the child mirror that, the way that they're expressing their emotion. And so therefore you think that this is the way it's supposed to be done. So like recently, let's just talk about this side note. Recently, my little nephew, Levi, he turned, I think 7 or 8. And I asked him, I said, what do you want for your birthday? And he's 7 or 8 years old. And he said he wanted a gold chain with like a little football medallion, which I thought was super cute and super interesting. But for an 8-year-old to ask for a gold chain, where does he come up with this idea? And then you look to his parents, my niece and my nephew, who are both wearing gold chains. Obviously, he's mirroring the people that he admires and loves the most. So he wants a gold chain of his own. So if you think about that in the way of emotions, if you are watching your parent express their emotions in an irrational way or an over-the-top way, or if you're watching your parents shut down and repress their emotions, then that's what you're going to do in your life. You're going to think, oh, that's how I handle this situation. I'm going to shut down and freeze and not say a word. Or this person got on my nerves, so I'm going to scream and yell and cuss and throw things because that's how she handled it, or that's how he handled it. So this was my life. Like, I did not know how to handle my emotions. And I lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of friendships. I had a lot of negative and toxic relationships. And I always felt like there was something just inherently wrong with me. I always looked at other people. I remember there were so many times where my brother would take me to work with him. And he worked in Los Angeles, and it's like an hour drive from where we lived, excuse me. Green juice making me burp. Where we lived. And as I sat in the car, I would watch, outside the window, all the cars driving by and the people in the cars. And I would always imagine their lives. And I always would think, like, they probably have it all together. They probably have a loving family. They probably get to sit at the table and have fun conversations and have a full, beautiful meal with and I think the reason why I believe that, obviously, because I watched a lot of television, and television really portrays and markets this ideal family setting. And I always thought, because I didn't have that, then there was something wrong in our family and with me and with everything. And I always used to think, like, maybe they have it all together and I just don't know how to have it all together. And I really sought that for the rest of my life, was that feeling of calmness, of peace, because I didn't know until I was in my late 20s that what I was feeling in my heart constantly was anxiety. The feeling of I was walking on eggshells every single day. I didn't know what I was going to wake up to. I didn't know what drama, what chaos, what fight, what argument, what dilemma I was going to wake up to. And, the more that I searched for that peace, the more that I reached for different things like alcohol and drugs and men and jobs and money and shopping. And I did it all. Like, I yo-yo dieted. I was crazy at running and CrossFit. And I tried all the different things to really fill the gap, including church, guys. I think I said the Lord's Prayer like over 10 times. I think I said, God, please enter my heart and become and save me like 10 different times. I said it in so many different pitches. I cried, I prayed, I was on my knees. And anytime I said the Lord's Prayer, I never felt any different. I still felt as if I was saying it wrong or doing it wrong, or maybe I just wasn't Christian enough, or maybe I messed up so much in my past that there was no way God was going to let me in his pearly gates. And I know that there are a lot of you out there listening to this podcast thinking the same thoughts, feeling as if you don't belong, feeling as if you are unworthy, unwanted, feeling as if no matter what you do or how you do it, there's no way you're going to get the life that you've always dreamed of or loved or love. And I want you to really pay attention to this. You are truly worthy of everything your little heart desires, everything. There is no wrong that you could ever possibly do to keep you from your worthiness of life and love and abundance and joy. There isn't anything that you could possibly do. And I was just having this conversation with a friend, and we were talking about depression, and she says, well, have you ever been diagnosed with depression? And I personally have never been diagnosed with depression. I know that I was depressed many, many times. I have been to many therapists. I was even prescribed some antidepressants at one point, and I didn't take them, thank God. But I know that depression is situational. And some people will say, no, like I am depressed. I'm truly, truly depressed. And it's, the psychosis of my brain. It's, I don't have enough dopamine. You try to come up with all the excuses of why you are depressed, but really depression is repressed energy. So there's something holding you down that is keeping you from being your true authentic self. Depression comes from not being who you truly want to be. And everybody's like thinking, oh, I want to be this person, but I don't have the talent, or I'm not educated. I'm not skinny. I'm not of the right race. I didn't grow up on the right side of the tracks. We can come up with a million excuses of why we don't currently live in the life of our dreams. We will say everything. Like, this is one of the things that I tell my clients to do. Get out a piece of paper, write down your ideal day. Write down what you would want to do every single day. And I did this exercise myself, and it worked. So that's why I have my clients do it. And when they start to write down their ideal day, they start to already have that negative inner voice, your ego, or your roommate that is annoying, that sits in your head and tells you all the things that you cannot have because of lack, scarcity, fear. Let's just name all the different reasons why these things can't happen for you. And let me tell you, the biggest thing you need to learn is how to control that voice, how to shut it down, how to tell it, thank you for protecting me, because it's all it's trying to do is protect you. It's trying to protect you from humiliation. It's trying to protect you from getting hurt. It's trying to protect you from being embarrassed. So what it's trying to do, your subconscious mind, which is your ego, your, which I like to call it edging God out, which is what Wayne Dyer used to say. But when you are pushing out all these beautiful thoughts of, I want to be this, and I want to do this, and I want to go here, and I want to travel there, and your ego or your subconscious mind or your villain in your head or that negative voice is telling you, nope, that can't happen. Remember, we are overweight, or remember, we're too ugly, or remember, we're Mexican, or remember, we don't have that kind of money, or we didn't come from that kind of background, or we don't have that education. When that voice starts to get loud, and we are the ones that have the control, this is what we need to understand. We are in complete control of our thoughts. Only you can have these thoughts. I can't physically force you to have these thoughts. You can control these thoughts. Yes, I can influence your thoughts. People can influence what you think, but you alone have total control of thinking exactly what you want to think. And so when these thoughts start to really get louder and louder and become more and more negative, and the negative talk, self-talk, starts to create that negative emotion in your body, and it makes you feel worthless and shame and guilt and fear, and it can really debilitate you. When those thoughts become emotions, the action that's going to come out of that is depression. You're going to want to do nothing. You're going to want to crawl under a blanket, never leave your room, don't shower, don't brush your teeth. You're just going to want to sleep it away. I know, because I used to do that when I was unemployed. I used to take NyQuil just to sleep the day away because I didn't want to face my problems. And see, depression can be cured when you do one thing. You need to change your thought process, change the emotion, and then change the action, right? So how are you going to do that? Oh my God, this is so hard. I can't do it, right? So when I was depressed, the very first thing I did was I need to get off this bed. I need to get off this bed. I need to put on some shoes, and I would force myself to walk in the neighborhood. I couldn't have, I was unemployed. I didn't have any money in my bank account. I couldn't afford to put gas in my car to drive myself somewhere, even though I only lived 30 minutes away from the beach. I would just force myself to just walk around the neighborhood, And if you're listening to this and you have a pair of headphones and a cell phone, I highly recommend that you put on YouTube motivational videos. Just type in Google motivational videos and start listening to that and walk. Listen to podcasts that are motivational like this one. There are many others, and just walk and listen. And it doesn't have to be an hour, 2 hours. It could be 30 minutes. Just start with 30 minutes. And then after that, when you get home, do the best to try to stay in a peak state. Now, what's a peak state? Okay, have you ever been to a concert and you're raising your hands and you're singing at the top of your lungs and you just feel alive? You feel like you are the singer at that concert and everybody's listening to you sing. That is peak state. And you could get yourself into that state simply by listening to music. Music is so powerful and so important. Any song can bring you back to that moment of your wedding day or the first kiss or the time you and your best friend drove down the highway and were eating burritos. It could take you back to your high school prom. Music has this beautiful ability to transport you to a different place. So if you have not created your powerful woman, your fearless female playlist, I highly recommend you do it. And everybody's playlist is different because I've asked my clients, send me your favorite songs, and everybody has different genres and different songs and different artists that bring them to that place of joy, of pure happiness, of feeling powerful, of feeling confident. So create that playlist. And when you get back from your walk, just close the door, even if it's just your bathroom, close the door and just dance and sing. Nobody's watching you. Nobody is watching you. And honestly, if you think about it, there is nothing that you can do that is wrong. Nothing. People are so self-critical. Well, I didn't dance. I'm not on beat. I can't sing. You can't mess this up. Really, you can't mess this up. Nobody's watching you. You're in the room with the door closed. So sing, dance your little heart out. Okay. So maybe you're listening to this and you say, I don't really like to sing and I don't like to dance, because think about this. You probably witnessed your mom or your dad or whoever was your caretaker that raised you and made it seem like, don't dance. It's embarrassing. We don't have rhythm. Or maybe you grew up in the footloose town and dancing was a sin and you can't dance. So maybe you still have that, little trepidation that you have to heal, that part of you. Maybe you've been programmed to believe that dancing is wrong and you shouldn't do that. So, all right, don't dance, don't sing. What if the thing that does bring you joy, that brings you to the highest peak, is art? What if you need to paint? What if you need to write? What if you need to play the piano? What if you need to draw? What if you need to doodle? Whatever it is that is going to bring you joy, bring your child, your inner child joy, do that. Do that until you get to the highest vibrational place. And make sure you're playing music, because music really is just overall the best tool that you can use to change your vibration, to change your state. All right. So once you've done that, you really need to focus on, how are you feeding your body? What are you giving your body? Are you not eating right? Are you not drinking enough water? Are you eating food that's been sitting on a shelf for 10 to 12 days or 7 days. Like, think about the things that you're bringing into your body. Now, I really believe that we are energy beings on this earth. So what has the most energy? It's definitely not something that's been processed in a factory and it's sitting on your shelf for 7 days. It's fruits, it's vegetables, it's water. Everything is being has nutrient, is highly nutrient, not deficient, but you know what I'm talking about. It has a lot of nutrients if it's coming from the ground, from earth, and it's been energized by the sun. So if you can get a hold of nuts, berries, fruits, vegetables, put that in your body. Do a cleanse. If you have to do a cleanse and do like a 3 to 5 day water fast, do it. Now, if you have issues with food, and let's just say you have a eating disorder, I don't recommend doing an eating fast, okay, or a food fast. I highly recommend you still eat nutritious foods. So once you have really changed your eating habits and getting off the bed and listening to good music, another thing that I really, really recommend is to get a gratitude journal. I love this. Gratitude increases what you already have. I didn't believe this. And so going back when I was unemployed, I was really depressed and I was watching Oprah, and Oprah talked about how every day she writes in her gratitude journal. And I was like, well, if it works for Oprah, who's a billionaire, it should work for me, who is unemployed and living in a small studio apartment and has barely anything in her bank account. And so I did. And at first it was really, really hard for me to write down what I was grateful for. I mean, I was unemployed. I was single. I was living in a small studio apartment. I had, little to nothing. Was driving a Honda Civic with the bumper that like grazed the ground. So I was thinking to myself, what was I grateful for? What do I have to be grateful for? So I started small. I'm grateful that I have a bed to sleep on, which, not a lot of people do in society. When you think about the whole world in general, there's a lot of people in different countries that don't get to sleep in a bed with sheets and a duvet. Like, that was something that I was grateful for. I was grateful for the fact that I had a roof over my head. I was grateful for, and I started with little things like I'm grateful for running water. I'm grateful for the food in my refrigerator. I'm grateful that I have a car, even though it wasn't the car of my dreams. I had a car with a little bit of gas in it. So I had more than most people do. And every day I would add 5, 10, 15, 20 things that I was grateful for. And I kid you not, my entire life changed. So if you are wanting to change your life, I highly recommend getting a gratitude journal. And if you're saying like, oh, I don't have the money, I used a AAA journal that they gave away for free. Like, I literally did not have money to spend on a beautiful little journal that I do now. Now I have multiple beautiful journals that I buy at TJ Maxx for $3. But before, I just grabbed like the nearest free thing that they gave me a long time ago and just started writing in that. So there is a solution to your depression. There is a solution for you to change your life. There is these things that we were never taught in school to do to really make an impact in your future. So like going back when I was talking about our thoughts, all of us have that villain in our head, that negative self-talk that tells us that we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough, we're not smart enough. There's so many not enoughs. And I want to really, really drive this in your mind, because I am so obsessed with like trying to figure out life. I don't know why, but I am. I have this brain that's constantly like, I don't know, metiche in Spanish means you're like too curious, or you're just like, I don't even know how to translate that in English, but it's probably a bad thing. My mom used to call me that. But anyways, I just always want to know. I want to know. I go into these rabbit holes, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to know that. But I get into these places where I want to know more. And when my father had passed away in 2006, I couldn't allow myself to believe that my father was going to hell because he was an alcoholic. I just could not allow myself to go there. And so I went down this rabbit hole of like, well, what happens to us after we die? And some people may turn off the podcast right now because they're like, oh, we go to heaven and that's all that is. But there are so many people that have had near-death experiences that have crossed over and come back. And I've gone down the rabbit hole of not only reading books, but listening to YouTubes and podcasts. And every person that talks about the other side is just this beautiful place of love, unconditional love that we can't experience here on this side. And they say that this unconditional love is just so beautiful and electric and enlightening that if we knew just how much we were loved by God, source, the divine spirit, whatever you want to call it, there is something that is controlling all of this, because there's so many beautiful synchronicities of this world that it can't just be a coincidence. There's just so many different things. You really need to watch The Big Rock. I think it was a documentary on Netflix that was narrated by Will Smith. I think there's 7 episodes. It made me cry by the end of it, because we really live in this beautiful world, beautiful earth. Hold on. I had to sneeze. This beautiful world that source, the divine spirit, the great I am created, and it all is interconnected. Every little thing is connected to something else. And just like every little molecule is connected to something else, we are connected to each and every person. And so I truly believe that we are here. This is not, I just listened to some guy while I was decorating my Christmas tree. He was talking about his near-death experience. And he said, this is not a courtroom, which is what religion wants us to believe. They want to believe that life is a courtroom and we're all going to be judged at the end by all of the sins that we committed in our life. He says, this is not a courtroom. This is actually a classroom. And we're all supposed to learn the biggest lesson. And I know that you're all probably sitting there. What's the lesson? What's the lesson? The lesson is to love yourself, love others, and love your enemy. Yeah, it's pretty much the answer is just love. Because when and I've read a ton of books and I've gone to a lot of conferences. Like I have so many books on my bookcases, not only the books that I've purchased, but I also have a ton of books, almost 700 books on my Audible account that I share with my husband. We've also been to so many conferences to see people talk, like Tony Robbins, Gabrielle Bernstein, Oprah. Who else have I seen? Jack Canfield, Eckhart Tolle. What's her name that wrote Loving What Is? Byron Katie. I mean, I have seen so many people and gone to so many conferences, attended so many masterminds, and have been surrounded by people who are multimillionaires and billionaires. And just like I'm listening to them talk. And, you know, yes, we all want to be accomplished and we all want to have things, and money is a tool that gives us freedom. But underneath everything, every human, and even Oprah has said this, that no matter who she has on her chair that she's interviewing, at the end, every single person, including Beyonce, including the president, including some prime ministers, they all say, was that okay? They want to feel as if they were accepted. People want to feel accepted. They want to be heard. They want to be loved just by who they are. They don't want to be changed. They just want to be loved as is. And I want to tell you right now that you are loved as is. Like right now, in this moment, you don't have to do anything to get this love from the universe, source, the divine, God, spirit, the great I am, the great chief, the dude, whatever you want to call it. God, source, the divine, created you as it created the mountains and the bees and the insects and the ants and the butterflies and the spiders and the leaves and the grass and the clouds and everything, energy, atoms, molecules, like every little thing that you can think of, from the smallest little thing to the biggest thing, elephants. God created that source, the divine, and then created you. You are not an accident. There are no accidents. There are no accidents. So you were here, you were placed on this earth to learn a lesson. And a lot of us still haven't learned this lesson because why? We don't have that unconditional love for ourselves. We don't. We criticize ourselves the most. We are our own worst critics. We allow fear to stop us. We allow our self-doubt to stop us. We allow our shame, our guilt. We carry a lot of our past on our back. And some of us are like, our backs are broken because we've been carrying so much pain, so much baggage from our past and wondering why things haven't changed. Things haven't changed because we haven't figured it out. And God's continuing to present us these lessons in this classroom called life so that we can learn and move on and evolve and grow. And eventually, you know, I think we're always going to be learning lessons for the rest of our life until we cross over to the other side. I'm actually not afraid of death anymore. I used to be severely afraid of death, but I'm not afraid of dying, because I know I'm going to go to a better place, but I am going to be sad for the people that I'm going to leave behind. But I hope that when I'm on the other side, I'm going to be able to guide them and be part of their spiritual family to be able to help them on this side. But when I think about, you know, life, and I think about like when I talk to my clients, it saddens me how many of them don't love themselves. How many of them believe that everything bad that's happened in their life, like the divorce or their husband cheating on them or a death or a betrayal or someone stealing money from them or backstabbing from a friend, somehow they feel like as if they deserved it, as if they did something in their past life or they did something and karma is coming to get them. And I don't know, maybe karma does work that way, because I do believe that energy that we put out is the energy we get back. But I also believe that you are making decisions and doing things in your life based on what you're supposed to learn here in this classroom called life. So God is continuously presenting you with these situations, these people, and source, the divine, your spiritual family, is wondering, are you going to learn this lesson? Have you learned this lesson? And that's one thing that, like, I remember thinking when I got out of my last toxic relationship. I was being choked out of the side of a restaurant after catching him cheating on me. And as he's choking me out, I had an epiphany. Like, why am I here again? This is my third or fourth toxic relationship, second where he lays his hands on me. And I'm smart. I have a college education. I'm making really good money. I have my own apartment. I pay my own bills. Like, why am I here again? So if we can all become that self-aware of situations or people, why do these people or situations keep showing up in my life? Why is this pattern showing up? What am I doing to create this pattern over and over again? And how can I break this pattern? And usually how you're going to break that pattern is by the set of beliefs that are driven to create this pattern. So think about this. When I was in my toxic relationships, my set of beliefs were, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not smart enough. Nobody wants me. I'm not lovable, because these are the things that my mom programmed in me. Like, my mom used to tell me, I don't want you. You're crazy. You're dramatic. Who's ever going to love you? Like, all these things that my mom used to tell me. And not only that, but my brother, my sisters, they would joke around and like say mean things. And some of these things were said to me and were hurtful. And even ex-boyfriends who were like, no one's ever going to love you, blah, blah, blah. All these, you're crazy, all these things. So those thoughts, those outside things influenced my thoughts, which then influenced the negative emotions in my body, which then made me allow men to treat me a certain way. I allowed that toxic behavior in because I believed that I deserved it. I believed that this is how love was meant to be, and this is how it's supposed to feel. And like when I think about like my mom and my dad, their example of love wasn't exactly healthy. And so the set of beliefs created the pattern to be with toxic men who abused me, who were verbally and physically abusive or cheated on me. And so I just stayed in that pattern. And even though I went to therapy, because before this last ex-boyfriend who was choking me outside of the restaurant, even though that happened before then, I had already gone to therapy. I had already read the books. I thought I could spot the red flags, yet I was back in the pattern. Why? Because I still thought the same negative thoughts and I still felt the same negative feelings. So I did not break my pattern because I did not break the set of beliefs. And so if you're listening to this and you want to understand why you are where you are, whether you're in a toxic relationship, whether you are broke and in debt, whether you are at a job that you hate, whether you have friends who are backstabbers and talk behind your back, whether you have a toxic relationship with family members, whether your kids are not, obeying you or listening to you or respecting you, you have to be self-aware to think, A, what brought me here? What is the set of beliefs that is creating this pattern? And then I want you to write down your set of beliefs. Like, what do you think about when you're feeling these negative emotions? I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm too fat. Nobody loves me. I'm unlovable. I'm too ugly. I'm too short. I'm Mexican. I'm whatever it is. Whatever negative belief that comes into your mind. And then I want you to think about what is that emotion that is being brought up? Where do you feel it in your body? Is it in your stomach? Is it in your heart? Is it in your back? Like, do you get a migraine? Like, are you stressed out? Can you, are you short of breath? Write that down. Where are these feelings? And then I want you to think of the worst case scenario. What's going to happen if you continue to use these patterns, if you continue to fall into these patterns again? And this is something that I had to think about. Paola, if I continue to think these thoughts that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not, beautiful enough, whatever, and feel these emotions, because the emotions that you're feeling are being shot out into the universe and saying, treat me this way, right? Treat me this way because this is how I feel on the inside. And so I want anyone and everyone to treat me this way, which is why when I was shooting out that negative, like transmitting emotion out into the universe, I got toxic boyfriends, toxic friends, toxic relationships with my parents and family and all kinds of things. So when I was shooting that out into the universe, I created the pattern again, and I kept getting into these same patterns. When I figured out what I was doing and I broke the pattern, I had to force myself to say mantras and affirmations on a daily basis. I had to force myself to stand in front of the mirror and say, I am amazing. I am beautiful. I am creative. I am confident. I'm a delight. I'm a treasure. I am loved. I am lovable. I am loving. I am funny. I am a catch. Whatever it is, say all the affirmations that you can, say them in front of the mirror. And at first, it's going to feel so uncomfortable. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to feel so uncomfortable. You're going to be like, this is fake. I don't feel this at all. It makes me feel uncomfortable to say these things about myself. Why? Because you've never stopped to love yourself. You've never stopped to encourage yourself. You've never stopped to really lift up your own spirit. We've been waiting for people on the outside to do it for us. Like I waited for a long time, 20 years, for my mother to tell me how much she loved me and how proud she was of me. I would be waiting another 20 years if I did that. We need to stop waiting for outside affirmations to make us feel good enough or wanted or loved or worthy. We need to do that on our own. We need to be the person that takes control and responsibility for ourselves and start the healing process of falling in love with who you are. Everything, every piece of you, every negative piece of you, every beautiful piece of you, every broken piece of you, every dark piece, every light piece, you need to fall in love with you. Because, girl, I have done some shitty things in my past, but I'm still going to love the woman that I have become and a woman that I was back then. And when you start to feel this feeling of like, well, I don't love that I was this person, or I wasn't a good enough mom, because I get my clients will get really sad because now their eyes are open, they're more self-aware, and they're like, man, I was such a shitty mom and I said those things to my kids. You have to give yourself grace to tell yourself, I didn't know what I didn't know, but now I know. And Maya Angelou always says, when you know better, you do better. So now that you know better, you should do better, right? So treat your children with love and compassion and empathy now. Give them the space to grow and to be who they want to be. Remember, this is a classroom of life. So they have to learn their own lessons on their own time and on their own journey. And all you have to be is a guide. So, and a good representation, because remember, they're looking at you and they're going to mirror how you interact with the world, with people, with life. So be the best that you can be. You can't change them, but you can change yourself. All right. So let's go back. You have now thought of all the emotions, you've written down where they are located, how they feel, you've given them words. Now I want you to get to that worst case scenario. What happens when you don't change this pattern, right? So for me, what would happen if I didn't change the pattern? I would get into yet another abusive relationship, and God only knows how that would end, right? Because most abusive relationships end with someone dead, right? Or someone in jail. And that's the worst case scenario. So if you're thinking like, oh, what would happen if I don't pay off my debt? Then I will be broke and living in a box underneath the freeway. Or what would happen if I don't forgive my ex-husband and I don't, amend that relationship? I'll never see my children again. Whatever it is, think of the worst case scenario. And that's easy for us. Most of us, our brain will go to the worst case scenario super quick, super fast. Now, what you need to do is now take a moment to feel what that would feel like. And actually, Tony Robbins does this in his Date with Destiny. And I think he also does it at UPW, which is the Unleash the Power Within conference. I highly recommend investing in yourself and doing one of his in-person conferences. It will be revolutionary and will change your life. But he calls this the Dickens process. And the Dickens process is, if you've ever watched that movie, the Christmas movie where it's like, the ghost of the past come and the ghost of the future comes. And it's basically that. It's the process of figuring out what would happen if you don't change, if you stay the same, if you continue the same patterns over and over again. Where would your life be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? What would happen if you didn't get a hold of your eating disorder or your shopping addiction or your drug addiction or your sex addiction? What would happen if you just continued down that path? Where would your life be? Where would you be in 5 years, in 10 years? Actually, I just watched a TikTok video of a woman who had surgery. She had this weird thing on her nose. And I was like, what happened to her nose? Apparently, she had been doing so much coke that she messed up the septum of her nose and her entire nose collapsed. And so she had to go get surgery. She had to get veins pulled from her arm. And, so if you think about it, what are your addictions going to get you 5, 10, 15 years from now if you don't change the patterns, if you don't change the set of beliefs that are driving the patterns that are creating the actions and the emotions in your life? And so now that you've done the Dickens process and you've seen how horrible of an outcome it can be if you don't take responsibility for your actions, now I want you to write down what would happen if you actually figured this out, started your healing journey, and really got a hold of your thoughts and your emotions and started taking a different action and started breaking the patterns and changing the generational curses. What would happen? Where would your life be then And this is when you really can write down your ideal day. And you could write down everything that you've ever wanted and desired, and you could feel the feelings of having it. And here's a really amazing thing is that it can actually become your reality. It can actually be your truth. You can finally be your authentic self, and depression will no longer have a grip on you. This is what happened to me. Like, I live my dream life. I sat down and I said, one day I want to have my own home. I want to be happily married. I want to have my dream car. I want to have my home gym. I want to be able to work out in the morning. I want to be able to inspire, influence women. Sorry, these green juices keep making me burp. I want to be able to make home cooked dinners and have an oven. I didn't have an oven. I cooked on a freaking hot plate for 5 years, and the hot plate, only one side of the hot plate worked. So I created my ideal life. I love my life. I wake up and I'm so happy to live the life that I have now. And even now that I have this life, still, I'm not perfect. I'm still growing. I'm still evolving. I'm still learning. This is a classroom. Like I said, we are still going to have these things presented to us to learn more and to grow and to evolve. Like, for example, now that I have all these beautiful things and I've been to amazing places like Bora Bora and Tahiti, and I've been to Australia, and I've hugged a koala, guys. I've literally hugged a koala, like a girl who grew up like broke. Like, my parents were broke, guys. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked, barely made $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 a year. We lost our house when I was 16 years old. Seriously, my mom used to put us in the back of the grocery stores in the trash cans, the huge trash bins, so that we could dig out fruit that was undamaged. She was what is it called? A trash, I don't know, scavenger. And now I see that on TikTok. It's actually a really good thing. People throw out a lot of great things. So I wouldn't mind doing that again. But anyways, we were broke. And here's this Mexican girl who grew up first generation American, who was broke, who was taught that money was hard to come by, and that it was hard to be successful, and it was hard to live this life, and that we were always going to be, struggling. And now my life is not a struggle. Like, I live in an abundant life, and I have a wonderful husband. I have 2 amazing stepsons. I have created my reality simply by changing the thoughts that I think and telling myself I am worthy of this life. I am lovable. I am capable. I am smart enough. I am good enough. The more that I told myself that, and believe me, in the beginning, it felt very uncomfortable to love myself, because I was really ingrained with the thought process of beating myself up and to tell myself I wasn't good enough. So that was a hard pattern to break. But once you break that pattern, the world is yours. Once you learn how to break that pattern of hating yourself, of believing you're not good enough, of believing that life is a struggle, the world is yours. I just watched another TikTok the other day and said, or actually it wasn't a TikTok, it was in the book, A Course in Miracles. And it said, every day we are rehearsing in our mind our reality. We are rehearsing in our mind our reality. And a lot of us are rehearsing the worst case scenario. We're rehearsing our kids dying, our parents dying, getting in a car accident, losing it all. We're getting fired, gaining all the weight, getting diagnosed with a terminal disease. We're constantly, and so many people are what is the word? Obsessed with true crime. And you know what? I used to be guilty. I used to be obsessed with true crime. The reason why I started this podcast is because I used to listen to My Favorite Murder religiously. And I was obsessed with true crime. I was obsessed with like all that negative stuff. It's like driving on the freeway. You're obsessed with watching the car accident and driving slow so you could see what happened. Yet we need to become obsessed with our future. We need to become obsessed with good things happening. Instead of obsessing over bad things happening, we need to become obsessed with good things happening, with envisioning and rehearsing all that we really want in life. That love, that job, those trips, the houses, the cars, whatever it is, the farm, the horses, the tractors, I don't know, whatever lights up your soul, the arts, the museums, whatever it is that's lighting up your soul, the concerts, whatever it is that makes you feel alive and the things that you want to experience in this lifetime. I love that Charlie Rocket said, this isn't my play life. This isn't like, oh, I get a second chance at this. No, this is your only life. This isn't your second chance or your third chance. This is your life right now. This isn't a rehearsal. You need to jump in and start being the star of your life, the star of your movie. And you are the one writing the script. But they didn't teach us this in high school or elementary school. They didn't teach us that what we think about becomes our reality. What we envision, the movie that we're playing in our mind, because we all can do it. Like I said, put on a song and you could envision yourself right back into high school dancing with that guy that you went to prom with. Songs can really make you create a story in your head. When you go to the movies and you're watching a movie, watching those characters kiss or make love or laugh, you are feeling the feeling of being in there, but you're not in there. You could do the same thing in your mind and create the life that you've always wanted. And you don't have to do anything. Just think about it. I just did a video on TikTok that said, everybody's always asking me, how could I do this? How could I do that? How could I? It's like, it's literally in the title of the book, Think and Grow Rich, and whatever rich means to you. Rich could mean a lot of things. I feel rich right now because I have a wonderful life with a loving husband and 2 stepsons who are amazing. And I have great relationships and great friendships. And I have this podcast and I get to do what I love. I never thought that would ever be a possibility because I thought, and I was ingrained with the program that you go to school, you graduate, you get a college degree, you get married, you get a corporate job, you stay in the cubicle for 8 hours a day. And then when they decide to give you a 2-week vacation, you're allowed to have that 2-week vacation. And then that's when you get to travel. And then you're always going to be tired because you need a vacation from your vacation. And it just goes on. And then one day, maybe you'll be able to retire in Miami and get whatever your life then starts in Miami when you're 76. Yeah, right. We were all programmed to believe that that's the way it was supposed to be. But I feel like we're in this new chapter, and I love TikTok and I love YouTube and I love that we are Facebook and the internet, and people are starting to spread this message of opening up your consciousness and awakening up your soul and allowing you to really start to question what program is running me and what program do I want to really run. And that's it, guys. That's my stream of consciousness. All right. Tune in next week for another episode. Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you love this episode, make sure to share it with your friends. You can find me on the internet at fearlessfemale.com, on Facebook, The Fearless Female Movement, on Instagram at Fearless Female Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And ladies, remember, we have the power to rise and face everything. Until next week, goodbye.